Roughly 4 hours ago, I reviewed a set of indicators that, taken individually, did not justify escalation: dispersed launcher movement, intermittent communications, discipline, fuel convoy activity at irregular hours. None of it was conclusive. Together, it formed a pattern. At the time, it suggested preparation. Now, it confirms intent. What we are looking at this moment is the transition from signaling to readiness. Iran is positioning more than 200 ballistic missiles for potential launch following Israeli airstrikes conducted in recent hours. This is no longer about messaging. This is about options being made executable. I spent over 30 years inside military and intelligence environments where patterns like this were not observed casually. They were tracked, tested, and, when necessary, acted upon. When you have sat in rooms where launch windows are discussed in minutes, not days, you develop a certain discipline in interpretation. And this, what we are seeing now, is disciplined preparation. This is not just an operation. This is a structural shift. The timeline matters, so let me reconstruct it as it likely unfolded. Initial Israeli strikes appear to have concluded within a 90 to 120-minute operational window. Targets were distributed, not concentrated. The purpose was not singular destruction, but systemic pressure, testing defensive response times, probing command coordination, and degrading selected nodes. Within approximately 2 hours of those strikes concluding, Iranian military networks began transitioning from passive monitoring to active readiness. This is visible through several indicators: the activation of mobile transporter erector launchers, changes in encrypted communications traffic, and the dispersal of missile units away from fixed installations. By the third hour, multiple missile brigades had shifted to what is typically defined as pre-launch posture. That does not mean missiles are being fired. It means they can be fired within a compressed decision window, often measured in minutes. The number being discussed, 200 or more ballistic missiles, is significant, but not because of its scale alone. It is significant because of how those missiles are likely to be used. They will not be launched as a single wave. That is not how modern strike doctrine operates. If a decision is made to proceed, the missiles would likely be employed in sequenced salvos. Initial launches designed to saturate detection systems. Follow-on waves timed to exploit interceptor depletion. Final strikes focused on higher value or previously defended targets. Timing gaps between waves could range from 8 to 15 minutes, enough to create confusion, enough to force defensive systems into reactive cycles rather than controlled engagement. Let me explain why that matters. On paper, missile defense systems are designed to intercept incoming threats with high efficiency. They rely on layered detection, early warning radar, tracking systems, and interceptor assignment algorithms. On paper, a significant portion of incoming threats should be neutralized. In reality, those systems operate under constraints. Algorithms prioritize targets based on trajectory, speed, and projected impact zone. They do not treat every incoming object equally. They make decisions. When the number of incoming missiles exceeds the system's optimized engagement capacity, prioritization becomes a vulnerability. Some threats are engaged, others are delayed, some pass through engagement windows entirely. This was known, this was documented, and it is being factored into the current posture. Reload cycles are another critical factor. Interceptor systems are not continuous fire platforms. Once a battery expends its ready interceptors, it requires time to reload. That time creates exposure. A coordinated multi-wave ballistic missile attack is designed to exploit that exposure. So when you hear 200 missiles, understand this is not a number intended for shock value. It is a number aligned with system saturation thresholds. Now let's address the technology in simplified but precise terms. A ballistic missile operates in 3 primary phases: boost, midcourse, and terminal. In the boost phase, the missile is propelled upward by rocket engines. This phase is short but detectable. In the midcourse phase, the missile travels through space along a ballistic trajectory. This is where tracking systems calculate impact predictions. In the terminal phase, the warhead re-enters the atmosphere at high velocity, often several times the speed of sound, and descends toward the target. Modern systems introduce additional complexity. Maneuverable re-entry vehicles can adjust their path during the terminal phase. Decoys can be deployed during midcourse to confuse tracking systems. Guidance systems combine inertial navigation with satellite updates when available. Even in degraded environments, inertial systems provide sufficient accuracy for strategic targets. Here's what that means in practical terms. Once launched, these missiles are difficult to stop completely. Not impossible, but difficult, especially in volume. That difference matters. Warheads vary depending on mission objectives. Some are designed for infrastructure disruption, others for hardened targets. Some carry submunitions to expand impact areas. The selection of warhead types tells you as much about intent as the number of missiles. Now we move to the question that defines the current moment. Why has nothing been launched yet? Why the delay? Why the silence? I've seen this before. The silence is the signal. Immediate retaliation is tactically straightforward. Strategic retaliation is not. Iran's posture historically favors calibrated response, timed, measured, and aligned with broader objectives rather than immediate reaction. There are 3 questions being evaluated right now. First, what level of response restores deterrence without triggering uncontrollable escalation? Second, what targets achieve that objective most efficiently? Third, what is the acceptable level of international consequence? These are not rhetorical questions. They are operational ones. From a military standpoint, the options are layered. A direct ballistic missile strike on Israeli territory is the most visible and immediate form of retaliation. It carries the highest escalation risk. A limited strike targeting specific military infrastructure introduces pressure while maintaining some degree of control. A delayed response, executed at a time and place of Iran's choosing, extends uncertainty and complicates defensive planning. Each option carries trade-offs, and this is where external actors become relevant. Major powers are watching closely, but they are not acting, at least not visibly. Why? Because any direct intervention changes the escalation ladder. Military constraints are real. Assets must be positioned. Rules of engagement must be defined. Political authorization must be secured. Escalation risks are even more significant. A direct confrontation between major powers in this environment introduces variables that cannot be easily controlled. Political hesitation is not indecision, it is a calculation. The silence you are observing is not the absence of awareness, it is the presence of constraint. The silence is the signal. Now we shift from immediate events to underlying structure. This outcome was not sudden, it was built over decades. Strategic doctrines on all sides have evolved in response to past conflicts. Each side developed assumptions about deterrence, response thresholds, and escalation limits. Those assumptions are now being tested under modern technological conditions. On paper, deterrence models suggested that large-scale direct exchanges would remain limited due to mutual risk. In reality, the thresholds have shifted. Precision weapons, mobile launch platforms, distributed command structures, these factors have changed the cost-benefit calculation. There is also a persistent over-reliance on technological solutions as substitutes for strategic adaptation. Advanced systems create confidence. Confidence can reduce flexibility. Reduced flexibility increases vulnerability when conditions change. This was known, this was documented, but adaptation lags behind capability. I will be candid here. There were moments, years ago, when similar escalation pathways were discussed in controlled environments, simulations, strategic exercises. The conclusion, more often than not, was that escalation could be managed within defined limits. Looking at the current posture, I'm less certain of that conclusion. That is not a comfortable position for someone with my background. But it is an honest one. Now consider the global implications. This is no longer a contained regional dynamic. Energy markets are sensitive to disruption signals. Maritime routes remain vulnerable to escalation. Military alliances are being tested, not through formal declarations, but through observed behavior. The world is operating in a multipolar environment. That means multiple centers of power, each with its own priorities and thresholds. In such an environment, localized conflicts carry global weight. Every actor is watching how this unfolds, not just what happens, but how decisions are made. That observation will shape future behavior in other regions. This matters, because strategic patterns are learned, not just experienced. Now step back further. At its core, this situation reflects a fundamental principle of military strategy, the relationship between capability and will. Capability defines what is possible. Will defines what is chosen. History demonstrates that conflicts are not decided by capability alone. They are decided by how and when that capability is used. You can possess advanced systems and still lose strategic initiative. You can have limited resources and still shape outcomes through timing and intent. That difference matters. What we are seeing now is a convergence of capability and decision pressure. The missiles are prepared, the systems are in place, the options are available, the decision has not yet been made, and that is where uncertainty resides. Not in what can happen, but in what will happen. So I will leave you with this. We are not simply observing a prelude to a possible strike. We are observing a stress test of the frameworks that are supposed to prevent escalation. If those frameworks hold, this moment becomes a controlled demonstration of power. If they do not, it becomes something else entirely. The question is not what happens next. The question is why the systems designed to manage moments like this are being pushed to their limits now. If this analysis adds clarity, share it with others who are trying to understand the structure behind the headlines. And if you disagree with my assessment, I want to hear that as well. Because in situations like this, understanding is not built through agreement. It is built through serious examination of what we are actually seeing.